Let us start the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Page number 224, please. Paragraph number 39. Objects of sublime rebirth consciousness. In the case of rebirth linking in the fine material sphere, the object is a concept and is always a sign of karma. So too, in the case of rebirth linking in the immaterial sphere, the object, which may be a sublime state or concept, whichever which is appropriate, is always a sign of karma, right? Is always a sign of karma, right? So even if it is an immaterial sphere rebirth linking, which one is going to experience because of the jhana attainment that the person has, even that object or sublime state, right, can be a sublime state, which usually is, right? Now, when we discussed about jhana, especially the immaterial, we speak about an experience, or the person who is the meditator experiences jhana before passing away, not ever during the moment of passing away. Not ever during the moment of passing away, but usually one would attain to the jhana and then come out of it, right? Now, even with regards to Nirodha Samapatti, right? The person who is trying to go into or experience Nirodha Samapatti, if it is the fact that the person does not have the lifespan to enjoy the state for the maximum of 7 days, the person does not enter the state of Nirodha Samapatti. The person does not enter the state of Nirodha Samapatti. This has been shown in many sutras where this example is quoted to say that a person cannot die whilst in experience of the sublime state, regardless of whether it is a Rupa Vachara jhana or a Arupa Vachara jhana. Okay? A Rupa Vachara jhana or an Arupa Vachara jhana. Now, table 5.6. Let's look at what is happening here. Or no, let's continue along page number 226 and come afterwards to 5.6. In the case of non-percipient beings, only the vital monad becomes established in the way of rebirth linking. Hence, they are materially reborn. Those in immaterial planes are called mentally reborn. The rest are called materially and mentally reborn. So materially and mentally reborn, right? Now, yes, Tamsiri?
Yeah. This vital nonad,
Yeah.
is it the in Pali Jivitendriya Kalapa?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the Jivita Indra Kalapa, because without that faculty, life will not be possible.
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
Right? Now, when that is said, one could say, what about the rest, right? Which does not play a part. Here, the vital runner, because Jivitindriya, what specifically, its specific task is the continuation of life. Chamari?
Yeah.
Bhante,
Yes.
I think it is the Shuddhashtaka plus the Kaya Jivitindriya.
The Shuddhastaka plus the Kaya Jivitindriya.
That makes the 9 nonad, the 9
Yes.
pieces of it.
Yes.
Bhante, when you say kalapa, it's always kalapa is always with the Mahabhuta, Shuddhashtaka, and Jivitendriya.
Yeah, that's why it's called the 9. Nonad
Yeah, that's right.
to do
Yeah,
with the 9.
That's
So
why we normally call it kalapa.
no, kalapa is only 8, Bappa.
No. Kalapa can be 8, 9, 10, 11, that sort of thing, depending on.
Yeah, so it will have a different name. 9, it will have a nonad.
Nonad, yeah.
And
10,
the others,
10 is Docade or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Table 5.6. Right. Now, let's see what goes on in this process. We have the old object, right, which is karma, sign of karma, and the sign of destiny, right? K, SK, and SD on the chart, right? Now, if we just go through it, the old life section, which has the rebirth there, right? Which has the rebirth there. And then the Bhavanga processes, which ends in the Bhavanga Pacheda, right? It is only referred to as Bhavanga here because the Bhavanga, the stretch of Bhavanga is broken into 3, or in its 3 part of dissolution, right? So it only refers to as Bhavanga here. And then they have taken the object as a present visible form, which is a new sign of karma, right? Which means to say that this sign of karma, which appears here, is different, of course, from the previous sign of karma, which appeared in the previous birth. This new sign of karma appears as a result of what is done in this present birth, right? Or what is done in this present birth. Then we have the Vottapana, right? The Vottapana, Anulom, the Vottapana, right? There is, right? All right. The Vottapana, all with the receiving, investigating consciousness, right? Going into then the 5 javanas, right? The 5 javanas, from the 5 javanas going into the death consciousness, and from the death consciousness, what breaks is the material, right? At that point, the material break happens, and then the new rebirth, right? That new rebirth denotes also start, right? Also start of the new life, continuation of the consciousness, now with different factors now supporting that consciousness, right? That is important note, different factors supporting that consciousness, because the position has changed, hasn't it? Right? The same conditions no longer support the consciousness. It is a different set of conditions that support the consciousness. Then going into, right, the rebirth. What is B1? Is it Bhavanga?
Yes, Bhante, it's Bhavanga.
Yes, the Bhavanga two bhavangas and then continue along the arising of the rest of what arises in life, right? But here, the bhavanga, almost as if Agantuka Bhavanga, this can also be referred to as that Agantuka Bhavanga, which comes in as the buffer. Because now from the rebirth, a rebirth type of consciousness process now would arise, after that arises a separate process which is of that life in its entirety, right? Which is in that life of its entirety. Now, the second one, the object, which is a new sign of karma. Here, in the new life, going through from the third bhavanga, continue along up until the 16th bhavanga, right? Then starts the manodvara vajana processes, right? Why? Because the faculties are too weak at this time to take anything. The faculties are just too weak to take anything in. Then we have 7 Jamana processes, and then going into the Bhavanga, leading on to the death consciousness. Leading on to the death consciousness there, right? Now, this is a new sign of karma which has arisen. The above diagram shows the rebirth process with the present visible form occurring as a sign of karma. What is a present visible form? A present visible form is something that you can actually see at that moment. Now, for example, remember the story of how a Buddha puja? No. Yes, a puja was done with flowers and adornments and decorations, which elated the mind of the person who was dying. The person had to go or was to be reborn in the hellish realm, but after this, the person was reborn in a divine realm. Now, that is a present visible form, right? Which changed or which appeared to this person as a sign of karma, leading to a better rebirth, right? To a better rebirth. With other objects, the process would occur differently. Note that the visible form with a duration of 17 mind movements is a present object for the 14 chittas of the last jhana process of the old life and the first 3 chittas of the new life. Again, right? Note that the visible form with a duration of 17 mind moments, right? 17 mind moments is a present object for the 14 chittas of the last jhana process of the old life and the first 3 chittas of the new life, which is that rebirth, Bhavanga 1, Bhavanga 2, right? Of the new life. From the third Bhavanga on, it becomes a past object. From the third Bhavanga on, it becomes a past object. Then starts the new sign of karma, right? The new sign of karma leading to whatever else, right? Leading to whatever else. Guide to para 39, 226. The object of the fine material sphere rebirth consciousness is the counterpart sign that served as the object of the Javana generating rebirth consciousness. The object of the fine material sphere rebirth consciousness is the counterpart sign that served as the object of the jhana generating rebirth. Now, what is that? What is the counterpart sign? Now, for a person who has developed into the higher states of the fifth jhana, right? What would then be the counterpart sign? Anyone remembers?
It's Udraha Nimitta. Udgraha Nimitta.
The Uggaha Nimitta, which is
Yeah.
another word for counterpart sign.
Yeah.
Now, what is it though?
It's the reflection of your object,
Which
which is in your mind. It's sorry, I can't hear you.
am
It's
I
gone blank. Okay. It's the you recreate the object in your mind in more stronger sort of vision, right? And then suppressing the hindrances.
if we no, we do not need to recreate it. When you now the Uggaha Nimitta is there in
Yeah.
your, it's never going to disappear, right?
Yeah. Okay.
When it appears as a sign of karma, this Uggaha Nimitta is because that is the tool that we used to enter the jhana.
Okay. Yeah.
So it is almost like the key to the door of jhana, leading to jhana. And what we remember is this key.
Okay.
This key will always be with you, right?
Yeah.
That is what appears. So remember, now we spoke about the sphere like Uggaha Nimitta, which
Mhm.
goes through different stages of life. Now, this is what we are referring to. Right?
Yeah.
This
Okay.
is what appears. And when it appears, this is the manifestation and also the representation of what stage you are in, which would clearly then say the Uggaha Nimitta of, this is obvious, of the fifth jhana is different and represents something different compared to the Uggaha or the counterpart sign of the fourth jhana.
Mhm.
In the
Bhante,
fifth jhana,
sorry,
one moment. In the fifth jhana, as we progress along to the immaterial states, the name Sanyana, Sanyayatana, and all these places, that same Uggaha Nimitta of the fifth jhana also changes. Now identifying with that respective attainment that one attains. This is an interesting point. Why? I mean, I think it's interesting. Right? Why? Because let us say, in the same way, when we had the first jhana, the counterpart sign represented something in respect to what was attained, which was the fifth, which was the first, right? When this same counterpart sign was developed into the fourth or the third or the fourth or the fifth or whatever it is, now it represented something else. It represented something else. In the same way, let's take an object that would have usually caused hate, which would have usually caused lust, which would have usually caused delusion. Now, with the impact or the solidity of Yonsu Mansikara, that object can also be changed to manifest, or rather, not manifest, to represent a different element within you. Right? So, whilst, for example, now there was this beautiful story. Dil, please, what did you want to say?
No, just Bhante, it's not that important, but counterpart is Patibhaga, because Ugga is the learning, Bhante, but never mind.
Patibhaganimitta. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
The yes, the Ugganimitta is what you take, Uggaha, what you sort of stare
The
at,
learning,
divide.
the learning one,
All right.
the learning sign.
Then, okay, moving on. I forgot what I was going to say. All right, let's move on. Para 39. Okay, this was what I was going to say. When the Buddha attained enlightenment, we remember he did not want to teach. He was in a state of questioning and contemplation as to whether he should teach. Wondering why this would be. This is, just take that element. The Buddha, for the longest time of any person who attains enlightenment, spends that amount of time in the perfection of the paramitas, in the perfections. And then up until that moment that the Bodhisattva attains to Buddhahood, he does not see. He experiences, he perfects, but he does not have a full vision of what the world truly is, or what samsara truly is. It is upon attaining Buddhahood, like the floodgates would burst open with pressure, that the Buddha would now see for the first time what samsara truly is. In that vision, or in that understanding, new pronounced understanding, the Buddha thought, my gosh, would these people understand what I am trying to say? It was for the fact of, when we say, the Sinhala word anukampa, right? Compassion, right? Compassion, right? Anukampa is compassion. Is it? Yes? Yeah. So when we say compassion, and if we take the Buddha's compassion, this was wholly on the grounds of understanding the weaknesses which were clearly apparent within the beings whose minds were defiled. That compassion, when he would get up in the morning upon this vision and this knowledge of samsara, the Buddha's compassion was completely and entirely driven by the wisdom, the discerning ability of the Buddha to understand the mass of suffering that people were experiencing knowingly or unknowingly. This compassion element of the Buddha was not just on the fact that the Buddha was a loving person. More than Buddha being a loving person or a caring person, the Buddha was a person who knew. In that knowledge, the Buddha had this anukampa, this compassion. Why? Because he understood the crux of all insecurity and how it roots into all of our lives, being beings within this universe. That is what gave the Buddha that element of Mahakaruna, or that great compassion that the Buddha had. It was driven by that understanding of samsara, of beings. So now, in the same way, that sense of discernment is what gave the Buddha the ability. The discernment was brought about by the true understanding of the laws and governing powers of the mind. In that understanding, or by that spirit of understanding, we too now are able to develop a sense of different vision with regards to objects that would usually create maybe the most obvious result. That manifestation to a person who has discernment working within one's mind, even during the time of death, now can be made different. A vision that would otherwise take a person to hell can also be a vision that could take a person to heaven. It is down to that person's quality, level, and standard of mind in this path of progressive discernment that wholly would take that element to then produce a result. Right? A person would see a certain realm, and over that fear dies. Now the object and the fear pulls him down even deeper. Why? You might wonder, no, the karma, the sign of karma has already arose. If that was so, if that was definite, then that same person who was to go to hell would not have been able to go to heaven. Isn't it? Because that sign of karma was for that initially to take that person to the hellish realms, and that was changed. Why or how was that changed? Because the person had that respect towards the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. And in that participation, seeing of all those decorations and all of that respect being given to the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, that element now changed that person's destiny. Do you understand? Right? So this sign of karma, although it can be quite something in a way that it creates fear to a person who has, or who is able to discern through that power and ability of discernment, can actually change the destiny as well. But this is something which comes with practice. Because remember, just like, we might have done many bad things before we started doing good things. And one of those bad things might come because we are so guilty of the fact that we did not do good things earlier, which is normal, which is possibly something that we have thought, I should have done this earlier in my life. But what changes that is that power of discernment. So it is not final, especially when it comes to a sign of karma. That is why there is two, the sign of karma and the sign of destiny. Do you understand? The sign of destiny is far, far, far more virulent and far more aggressive than a sign of karma. Usually, if we do not commit the heinous crimes, then we would have signs of karma, not signs of destiny. Right? Because it is a very aggressive or a very powerful karma which pulls us towards or gives us a sign of destiny. Right? A sign of karma can be manipulated and changed by a person at that last moment itself. Should the person have both yoniso, dependent, yoniso or ayoniso manasakara. Both yoniso and ayoniso manasakara. Damsir, you want to say something?
Yeah, but it's somewhere in the text it says, Bhante, okay, I'll tell you the last chittaviti is not a sort of an active chittaviti. It's a chittaviti that actually take you to the next birth. So I was wondering, if that's so, then your object is already defined.
Usually when it comes to
Yeah.
a sign of karma, right?
Yeah.
We are talking about a change in the sign of karma, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The Chittaviti process is talking about the process of that whatever change or what is fixated.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Yeah. So yeah.
The last moment cannot be changed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. But what we feed into the last moment can be changed.
It change. Yes. Okay. That's clear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
in the same way, remember, Ajatasattu is also an example of this. Because he was again Avicii, but owing to the Shraddha, he did not gain, or he was not born in Avicii, but he was born in a low realm. Right? The sign of destiny for a person like him would have surely been the burning fires of hell, Avicii, right? But it wasn't, right? That is an anomaly. That is an anomaly, right? Okay, all right, moving on. Guide to, yes, 39. Yes, guide to 39. The object of the first and third immaterial absorption, the concept of infinite space and of nothingness, become the object of rebirth consciousness in the corresponding realms, right? In the corresponding realms. The objects of the second and fourth immaterial absorptions are the chittas of the first and third immaterial absorption, right? The objects of the second and the fourth immaterial absorptions are the chittas of the first and third immaterial absorptions. I'm sorry, did I read that correctly? Yes. The objects of the second and fourth immaterial absorptions are the chittas of the first and third immaterial absorptions, and these are sublime states, right? These are sublime states. The earlier ones led them to attain or be what it is. Hence, it becomes the object that arises, right? In all these cases, the object is a sign of karma. The non-percipient beings are without consciousness and hence do not take any objects at rebirth linking. The vital nonad is the group of material phenomena containing the life faculty, right, containing the life faculty, organic matter. Determination of rebirth, para 40. When one passes away from an immaterial realm, one may be reborn in superior immaterial realms, but not in lower immaterial realms. And one may also be reborn in the sensuous plane with a three-rooted rebirth consciousness. If one is in a specific immaterial realm, he can go up or right down, but when he goes right down, he is reborn as a three-rooted being within the sensuous plane. Right? A three-rooted being within the sensuous plane. One may be reborn anywhere. The rest, sensuous plane, one may be reborn anywhere. The rest, i.e., those who pass away with two roots and no roots, are reborn only in the sense sphere realms. We know that, right? Damsiri, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think, did you skip
Yes,
the
I'm sorry.
paragraph? Yeah.
When one passes away from an immaterial realm, one may be reborn in a superior immaterial realm, but not lower immaterial realms. And one may also be reborn in the sensuous plane with three-rooted rebirth consciousness. When one passes away from the fine material sphere, one is not reborn. One is not reborn without roots. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Without roots. After passing away from a three-rooted existence in the sensuous plane, one may be reborn anywhere, dependent upon the state of that person.
Yeah.
The rest, those who pass away two roots and no roots, are only reborn in the sense sphere realms.
Yeah.
Right? Only in the sense sphere realm. Sorry, I skipped. All right. Right to para 30. The determination of rebirth differs significantly from worldlings and noble disciples who have not yet reached arahantship. The text above describes the procedure only in the case of worldlings, only in the case of worldlings. Then the procedure for this noble disciples still in training. I'm sorry, let me read that again. Gosh. The determination of rebirth differs significantly for worldlings and noble disciples who have not yet reached arahantship. The text above describes the procedure only in the case of worldlings.
Yeah.
Here, we will first explain the procedure for worldlings, then the procedure for noble disciples still in training. Beings in the immaterial realms may develop the immaterial jhana that correspond to their level of rebirth or the higher jhanas, but not those that are lower. Thus, when they pass away, they may be reborn on the same plane or on a higher plane, but not on a lower jhana plane. If, however, they fall away from their jhana attainment, they are reborn in the sensuous plane by the power of their concentration, and thus take rebirth with one of the three-rooted sense sphere resultants, and take rebirth in one of the three-rooted sense sphere resultants. Let's read that paragraph again for clarity. Beings...
Sorry, Bhante, the immaterial and fine material, they're all worldings, are they?
Yes, we are.
Even with their jhanas, fifth jhana, they are still worldlings.
Yeah. Because they are stuck in the world.
Yeah, and non-percipient, they are worldlings as well.
Yes, they are.
Even with the, I thought with the fifth jhana, they must be almighty beings.
It's not the fact that they are not mighty. It's a fact of where they belong to, and they belong to the world. Right.
That's why they come down with 2 roots.
Yes.
That's a shame.
Who are we going to lodge a complaint to?
To you, I suppose.
Oh my gosh. Then,
Bhante, can I ask, so now worldlings as opposed to sakers are still in training, is it?
worldlings as opposed to
Those in training or sakers?
who have not. So when we refer to worldlings, we are specifically referring to those who have not reached
Reached.
any state of enlightenment.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So that in training means sakers, and the worldlings, that's quite different to the jhanas, so which are worldlings. But here in Pali, sometimes the suttas, they call the people in training sakers, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, and we are prutagnana, worldlings.
Sakers, people in training,
Yeah.
Saker, the word Saker would also include those who have not attained arhathood.
Yes, that's
Right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, they are not worldlings.
yes, yes.
Right?
That's
The word is putujjana, which is a word.
Yeah.
Right? Not,
Thank you, Bhante.
not all people who are, although you might not be referred to as a Saker, if you are, I'm sorry, even if you are referred to as a Saker, that Saker would refer to then those who have attained enlightenment but not arhathood. Right?
Yes.
Aseka are those who have not attained to enlightenment at all.
Sure. Not even a soul. So you are just.
That
Thank
is
you.
why I mean Sotapanna.
Yes. Yeah.
Sotapanna.
Yeah. Thank you, Bhante.
Who flows into the stream or flows into the stream. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Beings in the immaterial realm may develop the immaterial jhana that corresponds to their level of rebirth, or the higher jhanas that correspond to the level of rebirth or the higher jhanas, but not those that are low. So if you're fifth jhana, you will not be born as a fourth jhana or a fourth jhana plane. Thus, when they pass away, they may be reborn on the same plane or on a higher plane, but not on a lower jhana plane. If, however, they fall away from their jhana attainment, they are reborn in the sensuous plane by the power of their access concentration, upachara samadhi, right? Upachara samadhi, and thus take rebirth with one of the 3-rooted sense sphere resultants, right? 3-rooted sense sphere resultant. The Vibhanga says for one who access or has access concentration, what immediately arises next is the samadhi or the state of jhana, right? That is why they call it access concentration, right? Those who pass away from the non-percipient realm are reborn in the sensuous plane with the sense sphere resultant chitta having either 2 or 3 roots. Passing away from elsewhere in the fine material plane, one may be reborn either in an immaterial realm if one has possession of an immaterial jhana, or in a fine material realm if one has possession of a fine material jhana, or in the sensuous plane if one has generated strong karma tending towards that path, that plane. tending towards that plane, right? One who takes rebirth in the sensuous plane after passing away from the fine material plane must do so with either a two-rooted or a three-rooted rebirth consciousness, right? I mean, I hope it is clear that word that they have used, tending towards that plane. I think that's it's beautifully put there. With regards to what leads a being into a specific realm is not the wanting towards that realm, but it is a state of mind that corresponds to the energy of that realm. Right? Here, if we would put ourselves in the shoes of a person who has or who is within such a pristine realm, and when we say tending towards such an object, what it is said, it would be ludicrous to assume that this person in the high Brahma realms is thinking about these petty pleasures down here. But what has arisen are vibrational thoughts corresponding to thoughts that would suit the energy of this realm. That is why in the fourth sutra of the Majjhima Nikaya, wish fulfilled, the sutra on the wish fulfilled, the Buddha says, one can reach any plane of existence should one have its corresponding energies developed through the Panchindriya. Right? You can go, the Buddha literally says, you can go anywhere that you want to, you just have to have the energy corresponding it developed through the Pancha Indriya. Simple.
Bhante,
Yes.
Bhante, I think we discussed this some time ago also. If you yourself train for achieving jhana, and if you don't want to go to any jhanic or any fine material spheres, you can actually come back to the sensuous plane to continue your path of achieving arahatship or at least something. Yeah. So that means it's depend on your wish or your intention.
Yes. But that is also, Damsiri,
Yeah.
the developed state of mind that usual Brahmas do not get.
Okay.
Right? Usual Brahmas do not have that ability because of the pleasure, the mental pleasure or whatever pleasures in their own way. It's not the sensuous pleasures, it is this mind-born pleasure that they are undergoing. Right? It is a person of very, very, very strong inclinations who would come down in that manner. Right? Who would come down in that manner, without which they will not get this sort of thought arising.
Bhante, but if you have realized like Sakrudagami or one of the higher state, then you probably would have the mental determination to be able to do so, isn't it, Bhante?
Very unlikely. If you are very unlikely. Even if one is Sakrudagami, because there is easier opportunity for the person to reach the higher states while in that plane compared to this plane. right? What Dhamsiri, as I understood, what Dhamsiri said was with regards to the bodhisattvas,
Yeah.
right? Who would come? These bodhisattvas have not attained,
Oh,
right?
I see.
And
Right.
they might want to come down to perfect the perfections, which they cannot perfect in those realms, right? That's another anomaly.
So, Bhante, but there are Brahmas who, in fact, there are in these realms, there'll be more Sotapannas and Sakudagami and Anagamis than there is in the sensual realms, isn't it? Am I right or wrong? Thinking like that?
Well, I think so. I think so, because if you would take, all the people, all the beings who listen to Dhamma and attain through the Buddha's teachings, I surely think and assume it to be so.
So,
Right?
Bhante, what Dharmacit was referring to was specifically the bodhisattvas who want to fulfill the paramis. That's a different category. Thank you, Bhante. That's clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is. It is. But remember that even for bodhisattvas to have that thought, even if you're a bodhisattva, right, and you might be working towards that, you have to be quite, if I may use the word, senior bodhisattva to make such a
Yeah.
determination also.
Mhm.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah. Now, for example, what the Buddha did with the choosing the birth, the mother, the region, right?
Yeah.
What is it called? The pancha?
Pancha Baluma, the
The five views, okay.
Pasmaha Belum, Nambrani?
Pancha
Pasmaha Belum.
Baluma.
Okay, the Pali word,
Yeah.
someone? No, okay. So now that sort of thing cannot be done by all bodhisattvas, for sure not. Only the Buddha was able to do that, right? That was because of his very, very, very strong samadhi, right? Which transcended and transcends any other Brahma or any other divine being up there.
Bhante, you mean not Buddhas, but those senior bodhisattvas, isn't it?
I'm sorry, did I say Buddhas? No, senior bodhisattvas.
Yeah. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, right. All right. Okay. Those who pass away, that's the yes. Those who pass away with 3 roots in the sensuous plane may take rebirth in any plane. Since a sense sphere being with 3 roots can perform any type of karma, those who pass away within the sensuous plane with 2 roots or no roots are reborn only in the sensuous plane.
Yeah.
Right? Only in the sensuous plane. They may take rebirth with either of the 2 rootless investigating chittas or with any of the sense sphere resultant chittas possessing 2 or 3 roots. 2 or 3.
3 roots.
Right? 2 or 3 roots. In the case of noble disciples, now we are talking about noble disciples, right? In the case of noble disciples, there can be no regression from a superior type of death consciousness to an inferior type of rebirth consciousness. All noble disciples pass away with a 3-rooted death consciousness. All noble disciples pass away with a 3-rooted death consciousness. Since without 3 roots, it is impossible to have attained the path and fruit. The noble disciples still in training, non-arhats, arise either in the same plane or in a superior plane. They acquire either the same type of rebirth consciousness or a superior one. Of course, those who have reached the path and fruit of arahantship do not take rebirth in any plane after death.
Yep.
Do not take rebirth in any plane after death. Para 41. For those, is that clear? Yeah. Any questions?
Bhante, when you say sensuous planes, it's all 11, is the six heavens, the human, four woeful, and
Yes.
all the 11.
Yeah, and the 6 levels.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Right. These realms are all about the we can't say enjoying in this case, attachment to the six senses, or feeding off rather the six senses, more than attachment, feeding off the six senses, right?
And the sublime, they are not.
They're not. They are about the mind.
Yeah.
They are about the mind, right?
So therefore, that's what you call kama raga. Feeding of kama raga. Happiness or unhappiness. Is that right? Or is it only when you say sensuous? It can be the low realms, which are all about pain, and then the human and the devas.
Kama raga would entail everything with regards to the sensuous plane. The sense.
So, or kama vachara.
Kama vachara, yes.
I think they are called Kama Bhumi. Those 11 are called Kama Bhumi.
Yeah, they are called Kama Bhumi. For people who have Kama Raga, they are reborn within this Kama Bhumi, right? But that is what sort of attracts, or that magnetic pull is the Kama Raga itself.
So it be kama sugati or kama dugati. Because the kama sugati is the manusa and the 6 devas. And the kama dugati are those other things, the nirayas and tirakshana.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, Bhante. Peta and that's all. And together they form the 11. 4, 1, 1, 5, and 6.
Yes, I mean, it's basically just other terms, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you, Bhante.
All right. For those who have thus taken rebirth from the moment immediately following the cessation of the rebirth linking, that same type of consciousness, apprehending that same object, flows on unpromptedly like the stream of a river. And it does so until the arising of the death consciousness, right? Until the arising of the death consciousness. So long as there is no occurrence of a cognitive process, being an essential factor of existence or life, this consciousness is called the life continuum. At the end of life, having become the death consciousness, on the occasion of passing away, it then ceases. Thereafter, the rebirth linking consciousness and the others continue to occur, revolving in due sequence like the wheel of a cart, right? Like the wheel of a cart. Guide to para 41. Immediately following the rebirth linking. The rebirth linking consciousness is followed by 16 moments of the Bhavanga Chitta. Thereafter, the mind-adverting consciousness arises, followed by a process of 7 javanas in which an attachment develops to the new existence. This cognitive process, the first in the new life, takes as object the rebirth linking consciousness. The javanas consist in sense-sphere chittas rooted in greed, disassociated from wrong views and unprompted. When this process ends, the bhavanga again arises and perishes, and continues thus whenever there is no intervention of a cognitive process. In this way, the stream of consciousness flows on from conception until death, and from death to new rebirth, revolving like a wheel of accounts. Right? Revolving like the wheel of accounts.
Bhante, in here, why are they not talking about the two registration chittas? If the object is very clear, then they should get the two registration chittas as well.
The registration chittas do not occur in this during this time because the object is not supported in a way that a sense sphere object or any other object is supported in that tense. Remember that the Tadalambana, the registration consciousness, is that which sort of clearly makes a remark, a mental note, annotation of that which was experienced through that process. Whilst the object is clear, this is more a process of passage, not manipulation, not awareness, not anything else. This is a process of passage. That is why Tadalambana does not arise.
So object doesn't matter here. That's what you're saying.
In this specific place, the object does not matter because it is playing out the power of the death consciousness process.
Thank you, Bhante.
Example, last class, we read the section which said the last process of mind is that which allows the life continuum to process the sign of karma. It allows that process now from karma, it allows it to now integrate with the consciousness process. The consciousness, that is why the consciousness process is weak. Because it is not governed by immediate consciousness at the moment. The consciousness at that time is only operating by a way of facilitating. Right? Facilitating. That is why a lot of people are unable to change their karmas during the last period of time. Right? Because owing to this process which is going to happen, the mind grows weaker. Right? In a way that it grabs things which just arises at that moment. Right? Facilitated by that level of consciousness. I'm sorry, by the level of power of karma, which is now loved into the consciousness through this process of death. That is why it doesn't have a Tadalambana.
Thank you, Bhante. That's very clear now.
Yeah. Is that clear?
Yeah, thank you, Bhante.
Good, good.
Bhante, can I ask another question actually? The first cognitive process of very first cognitive process of the newborn person or newborn life, it's actually greed rooted one, and greed rooted rooted one. So that's the basis of anyone's life, because that's the beginning of your greed, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so so that's
I
the
think the Damsiri, when I was reading this, what I remembered was
yeah.
this consciousness and this process, they are vibrations of energy.
Yeah.
The continuum of these vibrations depend on one most imperative and single factor. Is the nature of this energy to want to continue.
Mhm.
That is greed.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Very much. Very much.
And I think that definition
Yeah.
sits very well with these laws of physics as well,
Yes.
right? Because that imperative, this greed that we are all seeing, the love for chocolate, the love for iPhones and Apple, and love for luxuries, this is kosata kajuata. This is not what the Buddha was talking about. The Buddha was talking about that nature that creates this need, this governing law almost to want to continue. That is the cradle by which greed operates. That's
But could you say
by
that?
which
Could you say that that's a need to exist? The need to exist. That's why. Could you say that is not like the Kajuata Kosata greed for food or the need to exist to become? Could you say that though that vibration that quantum physics is saying is that in Buddhist term like the need to become or to continue to exist? Can you explain it like that?
I feel like rather than the need to exist, it is that need to, in like reproduction, like passing on of genetic identity.
Yeah.
Like in
That's
all of these cases, it is not to be at a certain level, it is to
continue. Yeah, yeah.
For it is the continuum. Isn't it?
Bhante,
That's why they're saying, Bhante, for even the reason with all these vaccines that they're producing and going to try to, the reason why they're saying that it mutates for that same reason, because there's a need for continuation. So when people are immunized and 100% are immunized, then it finds those who are either not immunized, the only one, and it jumps and it will keep on jumping. That's how quantum physics is explaining what's happening. So like what you say, the need for the continuum.
Yeah, we have piqued Pushpa's
Bhante.
interest with physics.
Bhante,
she has found, she has given us a privilege of her camera. Yes, Pushpa, please speak your truth.
Are you referring to Bhavatanha?
that's exactly what I was going to say. It's Bhavatan.
Not exactly, but yes as well. But I think yes, Bhavatanha is Bhavatan. Yes, I mean we would say Bhavatanha.
To become.
That's the
That's the becoming.
craving.
It's
The
no.
craving.
Wait. Bhavatanha is the greed that we have to become.
Yeah.
Right? Greed, or that what we were speaking of, what keeps this vibration going is not only to become, right? It is a bit more than that, right? Where it is quite difficult to single-handedly pinpoint, because it seems like this operates not only through one force, right? It does not operate just through one force. It has a couple of friends through which it operates. Because this energy whilst yes, becoming is a main part and parcel of what processes it sort of loves to unfold, it is also that intrinsic nature of what I can just remember right now as a word is a sense of passing on information and grappling more information, taking it further. So while it is to become, it is also that sense of continuation. If that sense of continuation is part of that definition of becoming, then yes, it is. Right? Then yes, it is. But remember, in Bhavatanha, if we take the Paticcasamuppada, it is specifically referring to a need to be born or to exist within a certain state. Right? Within a certain state. That is the reason that I'm saying that it is not only so, because greed is not only about existing within a specific state. It also includes the need to continue, the need to have not once, but constantly, the need to project something as its own, not only once, but again and again. That is why the Buddha, I mean, his example of comparing greed to fire was absolutely genius, because fire, it doesn't care what it consumes. It just wants to consume. It's almost, it doesn't have an identity of its own. Rather, it only has the function of consuming, and it lives and thrives on that process of consumption. Even if we are not throwing a piece of paper into the fire, fire consumes oxygen.
Okay.
Right?
Bhante, is that what the Buddha, when he was saying the Aditya Paraya, the fire sermon, that he consumed, is that what is explained in that sutta? In the fire sermon, in the Aditya Paraya? That's
the Agya Sutta, of course. I mean, it's talking about consumption, but we are immediately talking about the nature of greed. Right? So it is Pushpa, that is why I would say that it is not only Bhavatanha. Right? Because remember, in the central two factors of the Paticcasamuppada is Tanha and Avijja. Right? So if Tanha was Bhavatanha specifically, then we wouldn't have another Bhavatanha there. Bhavatanha is just a friend that supports greed in its endeavor. Right? In its endeavor. But it is not all-encompassing.
Thank you, Bhante.
Is that clear? I mean, what does your mind say, Pushpa?
So it's something more than Bhavatanha. There is a sort of like a pull, isn't it?
Like a pull. I mean, one could say like a pull, almost like a black hole. Almost like a black hole. Actually, I have read documents which compares that element into that element of greed to a black hole as well. You know, because we don't know where it's going. We really don't, do we? Because yes, we know it because of the feeling. It is quite much like the element of water. We know water because of the other three elements. Right? But without which we will not know what it is. The flowing nature of the water is because of the air. The temperature is because of the fire element. The hardness that we feel is because of the earth element within the water. Right? But water cannot be known, or it is difficult to know water or to do something like a water kasina at first without the other kasinas. So tanha in the same way, it is difficult to know without its other friends. We see the friends, but the enlightened being sees greed.
Bhante,
Yes, Chamari.
so the first Javana process in the new life, in the book it says, after the 7 Javanas, in which an attachment develops to the new existence.
Yeah.
So isn't that similar to the Bhava Tanha? Attachment develops to the new existence. It's called Bhava Nikanti Javana.
Yeah. Yes. The Bhavatanha, now if we talk about Bhavatanha, right? If we talk about the Bhavatanha, let us take. If we talk about the Bhavatanha within the 3 time frames, where does Bhavatanha exist? Right? Where does it exist?
I'm only just looking at, what the purpose of that 7 javanas is, as explained here.
Okay. Okay. So the
I also don't know, Bhante, that's why I'm asking.
okay. No. The Bhavatanha specifically exists in the past.
Okay.
Right? Its result is felt in the future. Right? Its result is felt in the future. Because, I mean, would that be clear why? Because if the Bhava was not there in the past, there would be no birth in the future. It is the craving for that birth which gave, it is the craving for existence which gave or brought about the respective births. So Bhava is a part of the past section of the Paticcasamuppada, right? The past section of the Paticcasamuppada. When it comes to this, the shift happens now. Whilst we spoke about the karma nimitta coming into play, allowing the karma to now become part of the process of mind, which will change or bring about the future result, which is the birth wherever suiting and wherever respective rebirth. Now that process has to break. That is where the new life begins. It is almost as if a child, I mean, not a good example, but anyways, someone gives birth to a child and gives it up for adoption or leaves it at an adoption center or wherever. From that moment that it is broken, it continues on a new life. But it is given birth to by other reasons and conditions. The present condition of life was not brought about by the present, it was brought about by the past.
Yeah. Yes.
That past, in the past, facilitates for whatever which is the present. But the present cannot go on up until the past is severed. That severance happens at this time of taking on or greed becoming an object or taking an object with greed, because now that is the moment the the nature that is most intimately known to us starts showing itself and allowing itself to unravel and unfold in our life, greed. Because of greed, we exist. It is not, again, it is not just Bhavatanha. Bhavatanha was in the past, which led to the rebirth linking happening.
For the present moment.
Would that make sense, Chamare?
Yes, Bhante. I will also read this section again and see. I think we are saying two different things, so they may need to be brought together to understand it fully. Because
so,
there is this sentence.
Yeah. So to succinctly summarize it, Bhavatanha exists in the past.
Mm-hmm.
The present moment to continue along its present condition has to have, that is where the greed arises with present condition and severs conditioning or dependence upon the conditions of the past.
Yeah, okay.
When a Kammaja Rupa arises, as through the fertilization process, and when the consciousness arises, that Kammaja Rupa is not owing to that child who is going to live. It is owing to the child if we speak about the conditions created by the child in his past life, not in this life. Yeah. So in this life, now the dependence of the child must change. Earlier, it was the past. Now, it is the present. That present condition is taken by the greed which attaches to the object.
Yeah, I don't understand this.
Yeah, it is as if okay, example. It is as if you move to a country where there is no Asian store, right? And you are still sort of, you can't eat anything other than Sri Lankan food, right? If you do not cut your dependence on, the crave, because there's no Asian store, right? And there are no ingredients. You can't imagine, you can't find any of the ingredients. Your sambhya in the foothills of Mongolia, where there is no Asian store, maybe. Or in Antarctica somewhere, where there is no Asian store, but knowing Asians, they're probably there as well right now. Right? Wherever. And if you don't cut the dependence you have on that type of food, you're not going to really enjoy, or you're not going to be able to sustain your life that moment onwards. Because you're in dependence of something which is not going to give fruit beyond, or rather give result beyond a specific time. To bring you to that life, what happens? You eat some delicious, Antarctican food, if that's even a word. Now that's the greed.
No.
Now you finally have a shining ray of hope, saying, "Oh, I can find something delicious to eat here." That is why greed is taken as the object, or the object is taken with greed. To enable the person, actually it happens by law, law of mind, because the mind is by nature it's very good at sustaining itself wherever it is. It is a very resilient phenomenon. And it is part of that resilience that it will find something to cling on to anywhere. And that is that nature unfolding here within that life. Do you understand? Did you understand the example, Devika?
No, I'm still confused about, no, when, so, okay, I understand. Okay, we are here because of our past, let's say, but when you go to the next birth, isn't that again what happens then when you die? And isn't that bhava tanha when you reach the next, I mean, whatever thoughts that come in, you are actually, we are not arahants or whatever. So all of us, when our time is over in this birth, we go to the next one. So that's what I thought as bhava tanha.
It is.
So,
but bhava tanha, if let's imagine that I am speaking as a 1 minute old organism, right? Bhava tanha was not there within this specific time of my life, which is 1 minute.
no, yes,
It was in the past life.
yes.
The bhava tanha that I build on in this life affects my next life.
Next slide.
Right? Because bhava tanha, the need to be, exists in the past always.
Yes.
And you are a fruit of that bhava tanha.
Yes, that I understand.
Yeah. Any questions?
Bhante,
Yes.
I have got a question about this karma nimitta. Now, supposing there's a man dying all alone on his own, and at the moment he'll get the karma nimitta and vata nimitta and he'll die. But suppose a kalyana mitta comes and then he brings a priest and the dying man sees the priest and the karma nimitta changes. Can it change like that?
It could. It could, it absolutely could, because there
So
was,
it changed. So
but
that means it can change the rebirth, isn't it?
yes, it
The
could,
whole.
but not at the very last moment. What is presented to the chitta santana, the process, that moment can change, but the process, when it's being processed, does not change. It does not change. But what is fed into that process can be manipulated and changed.
Right. Okay.
Now, there was this story of, I think you're the one who told me, Mala, when this cow was walking by the side of Jetamanarama, he heard the sound of venerable, he had the lifespan and karma to die instantly because of a previous karma this animal had done. And whilst walking on the edge of the road by Jetamanarama, he heard Venerable Anuruddha teaching the Dhamma. And as he was listening, he didn't even understand what was said. He was listening, and then a cart was going through, and it sort of pushed this cow off the edge of the road. The cow fell onto a ditch or whatever it was, and he died. The cow did not understand. The cow just found that this voice was pleasantly calming and that it was coming from Jetamanara. Upon dying, the cow was reborn in the divine realms with great lustre. The other is asked, oh, what did you do to deserve all of this? And this deity says, oh, really, it was a spot of luck. I only was listening to the words of this venerable who was teaching the Dhamma, right? And then deity, to thank this venerable, goes down, and she or he, I can't remember, says this to Venerable Anuruddha, oh, Bhante, thanks Venerable Anuruddha, right? So now that the karma was there for him, the cow, to die, right?
Mhm.
And probably the karma nimitta of that moment was supposed to be just the agonizing death of being driven off a road. But
Mhm.
now, through a present moment audible sense sphere object, now the karma nimitta changed and was
Mhm.
born in the divine realms.
Yeah, yeah.
No?
So it is the bhava tanha and the greed with for the gati nimitta. That is going to determine the next birth.
No. The greed, we don't talk about a greed for the gati nimitta. Right? We do not talk about a greed. There could be a greed for the gati nimitta. You could see very, very pleasurable things owing to the karmas that one has done. But the determination of your rebirth, if we are talking about the determination of your rebirth, that is owing to the whole process of the Paticcasamuppada. And a specific stage of that process is gati nimitta, which is specifically that need to exist and be and become. But if we are saying what is the reason for rebirth, then it would always, I think, tanha and avijja. Because the cycle of rebirth and death is what the elucidation, the reason that we are in samsara is elucidated by the cycle of Paticcasamuppada, isn't it? So it wouldn't be right to just say that it is only bhavatanha. But bhavatanha is a specific stage of the process which is owing to that new creation. I'm sorry, new becoming. Think about it, and if you have a question, we can discuss it next week. Okay. All right. So it's 8:33. It's 8:33, and I will see you on Wednesday.
Bhante, are we starting on chapter 7 next week? We are at the end of this one now.
Did we read?
Should be chapter 6, isn't it?
Yeah, it's chapter 6 next one.
Chapter 6, yeah.
I will just read this last paragraph. Okay. Just as here, so again in the next existence, there arise rebirth, linking consciousness, life continuum, cognitive processes, and death consciousness. Again, with rebirth and life continuum, this stream of consciousness turns round. The wise, disciplining themselves long, understand the impermanence, realize the deathless state, and completely cutting off the fetters of attachment, attain peace. This is the end of the 5th chapter. Yes, Noeli, we are starting the 6th next week. Okay.
Yeah, but then there are 2 tables we have to go through. In page 230 and before the chapter, Bhante?
230, 231.
I think we can forget about those 2 because they're so complicated.
Oh, we have to.
There are four
You should have
pages.
reminded that, Devika.
No,
There
no,
are
we
4 pages, Bhante, 230, 31, 32, and 33.
yes,
We will have to go through that.
the new one.
We will go
But
through that one. It's not complicated. It's just numbers. Why are numbers complicated?
Yes, numbers. Yes. Bhante, I have to leave now.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you on Wednesday. All right.
Bhante, when you said the wise, meaning the arahants, is it? The wise reflecting themselves long in this last chapter. We just read out that last chapter, page 229, when you said the wise. That you mean the arahants? The wise disciplining themselves, understand impermanence, realize the deathless. So those who cross over to become arahants, is that what they mean?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Take care. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Bhante.
Good night, Bhante. Thank you.
Thank you, bye.